So, my mom and I are big fans of the Great British Baking Show. We watch it every year together, and we always talk about making the recipes from the show. It wasn't until this last Christmas that my mom actually got me one of the recipe books called Love to Bake. And as I was flipping through it, I came across this crepe cake. It's one of Prue's recipes, and it just automatically made me think of spring. And I just thought, what a better time to try to make this cake than at the exact same time the Great British Baking Show is filming. So it'll be like my own little technical challenge. Fingers crossed there won't be any breakdowns, though I have a feeling I have a very long day ahead of me. For the sake of not spending a fortune on one cake, I decided to sub a few of the ingredients. Instead of caster sugar, I used granulated sugar since I already had plenty and I didn't think the recipe necessarily needed a finer grained sugar. And then in place of double cream, I used heavy whipping cream. And then some smaller swaps were using vanilla extract instead of vanilla paste, and using a canola oil instead of sunflower oil. And this is where I made my first mistake. I've only ever made meringues in the oven, but never on the stove. And I quickly realized that eggs can curdle easily with this method. For attempt number 2, I combined the sugar and egg whites together before cooking them on the stove. From what I read online, the sugar helps the eggs cook to a higher temperature without curdling. So for this recipe, you need 12 smaller crepes and 1 larger crepe to lay over the top to create the dome. So my next mistake was using this pan for my larger crepe. I quickly realized the pan bumped up in the middle, but for some reason I thought adding more batter would help. So I had to completely change the size of the cake because at this point I had wasted a portion of my batter, and the pan I was going to use as my small crepe pan had to now become my large crepe pan. While not difficult to cook, I inadvertently made the crepes a little too thick. Combined with less batter, I could only make 8 of the original 13 layers, but I was hoping at this point that a shrunken cake would need less layers anyway. At this point, I was trying to figure out the new measurements I needed for each layer. What should have been a 30 centimeter crepe was now a 22 centimeter crepe, and the smaller layers would need to be cut down to 15 centimeters. I did need a second set of hands to put the cake in the lined bowl, and then I wrapped it up to chill for the next 4 hours. It's definitely not a perfect dome, but I was hoping I could cover a lot of the mistakes with the decor. I did have a moisture issue as I began to decorate. Powdered sugar wasn't a listed ingredient, but I decided it couldn't hurt to add some. Unfortunately, any powdered sugar I added dissolved, and the matcha did the same, to the point where I realized I'd added too much matcha. Though, to be fair, the picture shows quite a bit of matcha powder on top. It ended up giving the top layer a bitter taste, so I wouldn't recommend adding too much if you try this recipe at home. In the end, I liked the taste. It's a very refreshing and light dessert, though I can't say it fully satisfies my American sweet tooth. As far as what I think Prue and Paul would think about it, I know they'd tell me the crepes, strawberries, and layers of cream are all way too thick, and that my presentation could have been a little neater, but I hope they wouldn't mind the taste. If you want to try this recipe at home, it's available on the Great British Baking Show's website, which I'll link in the description down below. Happy baking!